welcome you all, your respectable audience, for this informative session. Before going to in detail presentation, I would like to introduce and share a brief introduction of our respectable speaker, that is Dr. Samir Uddin Qureshi. Dr. Samir had for 25 years of experience in the country's largest tertiary care public sector hospital in different capacities, and presently working as a professor of ENT Department of Head and Neck Surgery, JPMC Karachi. Apart from his vast clinical experience, Dr. Saab also has engaged in a number of activities, like he is examiner in fellowship examination. He is also examiner in IMM and MCPS examination. He is an examiner of DLO and facilitator of surgical skills workshop at College of Physician and Surgeon, Pakistan. He is designed at ENT component of the surgical skills workshop at College of Physician and Surgeon, Pakistan. He is also a well-known lecturer at the MRCP program by Pakistan Medical Association. He invited speaker at many CME program on allergic rhinitis, vertigo, upper respiratory tract infection. So I would like to welcome, sir, please, Dr. Samir, please come forward and share your expertise regarding this presentation, sir.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum and a very good afternoon to all of you. The topic for today is basically known to you, it's upper respiratory tract infections. We as healthcare providers, consultants, as well as primary care, that means general physicians, the most commonest case coming to you is upper respiratory tract infection. Usually the infections are mild, but these days everybody is scared with upper respiratory tract infection because we all know that this novel COVID-19 or novel coronavirus, basically the most commonest way of introduction is by this upper respiratory. So the cases may be mild, but we generally these days are a little afraid to see all these patients. Anyway, what are the common basically upper respiratory tract infections that you all see? The first one which you commonly see is the common cold. The common cold followed by pharyngitis and tonsillitis, which are in the oral cavity. Then if you move a little down, furthermore, you can see the epiglottis. The inflammation of the epiglottis is known as acute epiglottitis. Then you can have the inflammation of the larynx coming down, which is acute laryngitis. If you further go below in this area, what you will see is acute laryngotracheobronchitis. Then if you move on to the nose, what we can see is rhinosinusitis, which is the most commonest infection. And then in the ear, the commonest infection which we encounter as primary physicians or we encounter as consultants is otitis media. First of all, let's start with some rare condition. It's not very common, of course. But pharyngitis and tonsillitis are very common, so I don't want to push much on them. We have heard a lot about them. So I just want to go for something a little different, but which of course is upper respiratory tract infection which comes to you. That is acute epiglottitis. It is inflammation of the epiglottis. Epiglottis is the topmost part of the larynx, which you can see. If I can show you, yes, this is the epiglottis that you can see here. If you see the base of the tongue and the thing which is coming up, basically, this lightish pink colored thing which is coming up, is the epiglottis. And the inflammation is acute epiglottitis. What do we see in patients basically who have got this acute epiglottitis? They may have fever and they have irritability, they've got a change in voice, and they've got difficulty in swallowing, especially when they swallow, they've got a lot of difficulty. When it's difficult to examine, of course, you open up the mouth, you don't see the epiglottis, but in children usually, this is a thing which is more common in children. So in children, what you see is basically if you open up and you put a little tongue depressor, you might see the tip of the epiglottis, which is more or less cherry red. If such patients basically come to you, you need to investigate them a little. One investigation which is very common, which is done with almost all patients, is you do a CBC. So in acute epiglottitis, especially when it's a viral infection, what you'll see is, you will see, and it is a viral infection commonly, you will see leukocytosis or high count of WBCs with neutrophilia. There can be cultures basically taken from the site if possible, which is a little difficult, and there can be cultures which can be done from the blood. There's a typical sign on radiograph, which is the lateral radiograph, that's known as a thumb sign, which is seen in lateral soft tissue shadow of the neck, of the larynx, which is performed, and you see a shadow which is known as a thumb sign. The differential diagnosis can be many, starting from Kraub to any sort of foreign body aspiration or inhalation, and diphtheria, and so on and so forth. Then what you see is acute laryngitis. If you go down below the epiglottis is the topmost part basically where you can see. If you go down a little, this is a proper larynx. Acute inflammation of the larynx is known as acute laryngitis. In upper respiratory, as I've mentioned earlier as well, that most of the problems, most of the infections are caused by viruses rather than bacteria. More than 80% of these infections are viral. And as we all know, that viral infections are self-limiting. They go by a time, but they do produce symptoms where they are present in a particular period of time. So in acute laryngitis, what you will see is, you will see fever as a common basically sign, which everybody knows that you have fever. Then you will have hoarseness, and this hoarseness may end up sometimes aphonia, that you can't even hear somebody. And the clinical manifestation of larynx, of course, the history is important. People who can do indirect laryngoscopy can have a look at the larynx. Otherwise, you can't have a good look at the larynx. And of course, there can be a host of differential diagnoses, but as this history is very short, you basically go for acute thing. Otherwise, if the history is lengthy and there is no site of acute inflammation, you can think of host of things like a malignancy or something. Going further down, you can have acute laryngotracheobronchitis. This again is a condition which is common in children as compared to the adults. But it doesn't mean that adult population cannot have it. They can, but it's more common in children as compared to adults. Common organisms are usually viruses, starting from influenza and parainfluenza. And this is usually preceded by an upper respiratory tract infection. The patient is seriously ill. The patient develops a noisy breathing, which is known as stridor. The patient may need oxygen support. So especially in the particular circumstances that we are facing nowadays, this is one thing which can happen. As this has proceeded with the upper respiratory tract infection, went on to become stridor, though this can definitely confuse you with the viral infection that we are facing these days, which is known as COVID-19. Then coming to pharyngitis, which is probably the most commonest of the upper respiratory tract infections. The common causes, as I told you earlier, the most common basically etiology of pharyngitis and infections are viral, and the host of virus starting from rhinovirus to parainfluenza, influenza, adeno, cocci, Epstein, and so on and so forth. The bacterial infections, the dreaded one is beta hemolytic streptococcus. Then you can have a host of other infections caused by basically Mycoplasma pneumoniae, influenza, Haemophilus influenza. You can have trypanoma. Then you can have diphtheria also, which of course is one form of pharyngitis. In pharyngitis, in streptococcus especially, which is the dreaded one. Otherwise, the other ones are trivial. They don't cause much of problem. What you can have is, you can have fever, which can be low grade or it can be high grade both. But usually if it is combined with the tonsillitis, it's usually high grade, which is known as pharyngotonsillitis. There's a common condition in which there's inflammation of the pharynx as well as the tonsils. It's known as pharyngotonsillitis. So in that particular condition, you can have and of course, streptococcus may be the causative organism, beta-hemolytic streptococcus. So you can have high-grade fever, you can have pharyngeal pain during swallowing, which is known as dysphagia. Then you can have very painful, in addition to difficulty in swallowing, you can have a painful swallowing like odynophagia, especially if there is a complication like a quinsy or something. When you've got high-grade temperature, you've got headaches, you do have chills, and on examination, especially if it's acute follicular tonsillitis, you can have a patchy gray, yellow exudate coming out of the surface of the tonsils from different crypts. There are crypts which are present at the surface of the tonsils. There are 4 to basically 8 crypts which are present. The biggest crypt is known as crypta magna, and you can have those exudate which are coming out of the crypts. Then you can have tender lymphadenopathy. This lymphadenopathy is usually seen in the area of the jugulo-digastric, and you can have tender lymph nodes which are present there in case of pharyngotonsillitis. Then there is a condition which is known as Vincent's angina, and this Vincent's angina is caused by anaerobic bacteria, and usually it is seen with small ulcers which are there. Then you can have fevers of viral origin, particularly in which you've got a backache, you've got myalgia, you have malaise, you've got headaches, and all the signs of acute inflammation. And this is combined with basically conjunctivitis. This is pharyngoconjunctival fever. Then herpetic pharyngitis can also occur, in which you have got cervical lymphadenopathy, you've got small vesicles and ulcers, which are mostly shown on the palate. And then you can have an exudate which is coming out of them. This is a little differential diagnosis, basically of different conditions which can have. And usually this is in cases where you've got a chronic infection, a chronic like infection, then you can have this, right? The usual investigation, generally in our population, people do not want to go for any sort of investigation. Hamare paas, the patient is impatient and the doctor is impatient as well, because he wants to prescribe. He doesn't want to go for any big investigation. So what you need to do is you need, in circumstances basically where people have been infected or have been ill for a little longer time, they want to go for investigations. So what you can do is basically the best investigation will be a throat swab culture. Then you can have serological test if it's a long-standing infection. You can have a monospot test or a Paul-Banel test, which is basically done for infectious mononucleases, because it's got a similar presentation as pharyngotonsillitis with lymphadenopathy. Then you can have a rapid antigen test in throat swab, and for different basically organisms, you can have different serological tests, like especially for viruses. Acute rhinosinusitis basically is one of the most commonest infections as far as nose and the paranasal sinuses are concerned. Sinusitis of less than 4-week duration basically is labeled as acute rhinosinusitis, or it is preceded by some sort of viral, basically, as I told you that most of the infections are viral, usually it's preceded by some sort of viral infection or some sort of allergy or some sort of common cold which has occurred there. And then this leads to edema. When there is edema, there is a blockage of the ostium. When there's a blockage of the ostium, there are secretions basically in the sinuses. When these sterile secretions, they get infected, they lead to a condition which is known as acute sinusitis. This is the whole pathogenesis as far as acute sinusitis is concerned. So usually when it's a sterile thing, gets infected by bacteria, it has to be dealt with antibiotics. This area, because of the swelling of the mucosa and because of the poor blood supply, and as antibiotics need to be given for a longer period of time as compared to other infections. This is again what I told you earlier, that there's a preceding bout of allergy or a preceding bout of common cold or acute viral infection, and that leads to edema. When there's edema, there's a blockage of the ostium. When there's a blockage of the ostium, there are secretions basically which are stored in that sinus, and that sterile secretions, when they get infected, they lead to acute sinusitis. I'm just repeating what I've said earlier. This is the pathogenesis. Then in non-infectious cases, basically, in which you can have this condition is, of course, allergies. Then in some sort of nasal sinus tumors, you can have basically sinusitis. But in a special condition, which is known as cystic fibrosis, in which you have got altered mucous content, which basically is seen in the pulmonary tract, and it is also seen in the nasal cavity because of the united airways. And these children do have sinusitis. These children do have chest problems as well, even pneumonias, and they don't live much long. But they do have this problem, which is known as cystic fibrosis. There are a host of bacterial causes, starting from strep pneumoniae to Haemophilus influenza, Moxarella catarrhalis, anaerobes, chlamydia, mycoplasma, and so on and so forth. Then they can be acquired basically from the hospitals like Staph aureus, nosocomial infections, of course, and these are Enterobacter, Klebsiella, Pseudomonas aeruginosa, and MRSA basically, which can all be acquired as nosocomial infections. What are the manifestations? Basically, what we get is that there is a discharge which is coming out of the nose, which is known as rhinorrhea. There can be congestion and stuffiness basically present in the nose. There can be a nasal obstruction. Then there can be signs of facial pain, and there can be headache, especially frontal headache. When the patient complains of discolored discharge which is coming on from there, you can have basically, you can see that there is thick secretions which are coming out of there. Then, of course, there can be a postnasal drip leading to some sort of mild or moderate sore throat. Then they can, because of the postnasal drip, the patient may even complain of cough. In acute, of course, as with all acute infections, you can have fever. Because of the specific location of the maxillary sinus, which is the commonest sinus to be involved, followed by the frontal or the ethmoidal. Basically, when we say sinusitis, usually it is so common that we usually mean maxillary sinusitis. Because of its typical location, what you can have is, you can always have pain in the upper molar tooth, which are there because of the bacterial sinusitis. When you have got a bacterial sinusitis, the symptoms may last for a little time. I told you that there are two problems. One is poor blood supply. The second is the inflammation of the sinuses leading to drugs which are delivered at a low quantity as compared to others. And thirdly, a presence of infection which leads to further edema. So what will happen is that a diagnosis will basically rest on these things, and of course you can diagnose basically on the symptoms which I've told you, that nasal obstruction, congestion, rhinorrhea, usually purulent, and then again headaches, fever, malaise which may present on examination, stuffy, basically nasal mucosa, thick purulent secretions coming out. So this will give you an idea that basically you are suffering from this thing. Then acute otitis externa. Acute is the reason is it's always acute. Otitis externa are two types, acute and malignant. Otitis externa, as the name denotes, basically it's the inflammation of the outer ear. The ear comprises of three parts: outer ear, the middle ear, and the internal ear or inner ear. This is the inflammation of the outer part. Basically, the most commonest cause is a boil, followed by fungus. And boil is by Staph aureus, and there is always a history of itching. Because the hair-bearing area, the boil occurs in the hair-bearing area. The hair-bearing area is on the outside, jahan baal nikle, small hair follicles. Whenever you scratch, whenever you basically fiddle with that, the hair follicle gets infected with Staph aureus, and it leads to boil, which is very painful. Very painful, it's got difficulty in opening the mouth, even when you talk, it hurts. And fungal infections are the next common infections. They can be aspergillus, and people who basically keep on cleaning their ears with cotton bud, keep on itching their ears, basically they do develop. Then viral infections can be like herpes zoster oticus, and predisposing factors are usually scratching the ears, high humidity in which you develop all that, small amount of eczema which will be present, which leads to and trauma. These are the common things which basically predispose. The symptoms, severe otalgia. Really, it is so painful that the patient cannot even sleep unless and until you've given him a very potent non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drug. Then in some cases where the boil has bursted or a boil has given a small opening, there might be a small amount of pus coming out. Because of the inflammation, the ear, basically both the walls, the anterior wall and the posterior wall of the external ear, they come in conjunction, and there is no transmission of voice. Basically, you can't hear properly then. And there is inflammation with lymphadenopathy. There may be a small node present in the parotid area or the postoral area. Then there is another condition which is a misnomer. Misnomer in the sense of the word. It's not a malignancy at all, but it's called malignant otitis externa. It is seen in patients with uncontrolled diabetes and in immunocompromised patients. It is basically an osteomyelitis of the main bone. The temporal bone is the main bone of the ear. It's an osteomyelitis of this bone. The organism is most of the times, more than 95% of the times, is Pseudomonas aeruginosa. It is such a painful condition that it's the patient can't sleep, can't eat, can't drink. He's got pain all the time. You have to give very potent painkillers in addition to things like gabapentin. If the sugar, the diabetes is not controlled properly, the infection is not addressed properly. Like when I say properly addressed, I mean injectable antibiotics for a period of time. The patient may in fact go on to develop renal palsy. And sometimes, why it is named malignant? Because sometimes if not treated properly, it can lead to a severe sort of osteomyelitis, which may be fatal as well. Then coming to the next common condition, which I told you after boil, that is fungal infections. You can see small spores. This is yellow. They come in different colors. Albus, flavus, niger. And this is aspergillus. So these are small spores which are present. You can see the examination of the ear. You can see the eardrum bilkul right in front. And then on the sides across the wall, you can see spores and yellowish, basically material which is lying there, which is of course is the fungus. Fungus will have a typical pain. It will have severe pain, but it will come in bouts. And there will be bouts which will be free of pain. The common thing in Pakistan, they say is T-Smith-Theodoxa. There'll be a sharp shooting pain followed by dull ache. Then there'll be a sharp shooting pain. This is typical of fungal infections in Pakistan. Of course, fullness will be there because the more the fungus grows, it keeps on obliterating the ear canal, and you can have fullness of the ear. This fullness of the ear basically secondarily can cause deafness. When you examine, this can be of different colors, white, black, or yellow, according to the aspergillus that we have. This is otitis media, which of course is a common condition in the ear. This otitis media, as the name states, otitis means inflammation of the ear, media means middle ear. Acute is most commonly seen in children, chronic is seen in adults. But you can have both cases, vice versa. Acute is usually subjected with some sort of predisposing factor in the upper respiratory, like tonsillitis, like adenoids, like nasal congestion, like Cutral children. They can always, all of them can predispose basically to acute otitis media. Once the ear drum is perforated and remains perforated for a specific period of time, we label it, the discharge, we call it a chronic suppurative otitis media. The diagnosis in acute cases is usually hearing loss because of the inflammation which is there and because of the infection which has gone there. Ear pain, very severe ear pain occurs in otitis media as well. There may be fever in the patient also, and there can be signs which predispose like acute Cutral child, like tonsillitis, like adenoids, and so on and so forth. Furunculosis or boil, we have already discussed. I don't want to go into that again. Then herpes zoster oticus or Ramsay-Hunt syndrome. This is a syndrome basically which occurs in the geniculate ganglion of the facial nerve. It is a combination of a rash which is present on the pinna, the ear, on the same side of the face. This is combined usually with the facial nerve palsy, and in some cases, it has got vertigo as well. But usually a combination of this rash, pain, severe pain deep down, basically in the ear, and facial nerve palsy. Then there is another condition which is known as perichondritis. Perichondritis, as the name states, it is the inflammation of the perichondrium. This perichondrium is at the outer ear, basically this hyaline cartilage, and this hyaline cartilage, in fact, the perichondrium over it gets inflammation, and the reason of inflammation may be trauma in some cases, jaise hota hai, thappad laga, anything. Then because of ear piercing or laceration, surgery, or some sort of connective disorder we can have. Treatment is usually, it needs to be treated well because it has got a tendency that it doesn't respond very well if it's not treated good. In some cases, you may need to use injectable antibiotics, even if the case is bad. You may need to do an incision drainage. Otherwise, if you've seen it in the start, you give some very good potent antibiotics and this will resolve your problem. If suppose this doesn't heal, then of course perichondrium is the main reason of supply of blood to the cartilage. Because all the periosteum, perichondrium, these are the areas which carry the blood to the bone or to the cartilage. And if it is compromised, the perichondrium is compromised, there will be no blood supply. And the cartilage will die. And when it will die, it will get fibrous. So it will lead to a ear which looks like a cauliflower. This is another condition in which you have got multiple bony swelling which are lying in the external ear, and they are usually near the tympanic membrane. They are swelling. They are usually 3 in number, and they are known as hyperostosis, and usually seen in people who go who swim in a lot of cold water. So it's more common in the Western races as compared to us. And sometimes you can have a single one, that is osteoma, but these, which are many, usually 3 or 4 or 2, they are usually osteosis.